This week, one of our new independent MPs made headlines for a virtue signalling stunt, and our virtue-hungry media ate it up.
The oncoming national significant burden of disability and chronic illness. Put your masks on. From repeated infection.
Order.
From repeated infection with COVID-19.
Well, that was Monique Ryan not wearing a mask, telling other people to wear a mask, even though there is no rule to do so. She looks like she's been waiting her whole life to tell people what to do, hasn't she? There is nothing stopping Ryan from wearing a mask while she lections Australians, but she chooses not to. And the way she snapped was just bizarre. And this is how The Guardian covered it. Put your mask on. Monique Ryan gives coalition dressing down during question time. Former paediatric neurologist was speaking about the risk of long COVID when opposition MPs, most of whom were not wearing a mask, interjected. Well, there was no mention in that article of the clear, indisputable fact that Ryan herself was not wearing a mask. And The Guardian must have a short memory, because we caught their star reporter, Anne Davies, not wearing a mask last year at a press conference when there was actually a mask mandate. One rule for the progressive darlings who order you to follow their direction, and another for everyday Aussies or conservative politicians. Caroline, not against wearing masks. If you want to wear one, wear one. But this whole debate in Parliament, it appears to be, very tribal in nature and something that just keeps popping up. People on the left are yelling at people for not wearing a mask in Parliament.
Well, that's because they're dirty little authoritarians, Jack, and they love telling the rest of us what to do. They love telling the rest of us what to do. And look, the fact of the matter is it's not mandated. You don't have to do it. You know what? People can make their own decisions. People can take responsibility for their own behaviour. They do not need an independent. They do not need to be told by someone who thinks they know what's best for everyone what to do. And quite frankly, I think when you look at Australia in more broad terms, I think people have had it up to the back teeth with having every single little part of their lives, interfered with and obstructed, and just not being able to have any independence anymore. And I think people have had enough of it. But obviously, The Guardian, they're totally in sync with the rest of the dirty little authoritarians, Jack. So you know what? They're always going to support this.
Kosher, I always love when journalists lecture people and they shame the Conservative politicians for not doing it, but then their own reporters, they don't follow the rules themselves. And in that case, the vision that we showed, that was actually breaking the law in that clip. There was a clear mask mandate. So the Guardian actually went far above and beyond what these politicians did. No mention of that in the story, though.
It's not about hypocrisy even anymore, Jack. It's about hierarchy and, rules for thee and not for me, as both you and Caroline have mentioned. And I think the way people, both elected representatives and unfortunately unelected bureaucrats, have conducted themselves over the past 2 years all around the world has really pulled the mask back, pun intended, on where they really stand on that spectrum of libertarianism versus authoritarianism. And, this is just the latest example of that, where they keep insisting, believe the experts and not what your own lying eyes tell you. Some of the most locked down, vaccinated and masked cities on earth, Australia is unfortunately at the top of that list, are seeing rises in cases and hospitalizations despite all of that. Everybody can see it. What we see with leaders that were the most definitive in advocating masking and other things, from Joe Biden to Ardern to Macron to Trudeau, they've all been double masking, triple vax. They've all had it. People see this. They don't want to be told what to do anymore. And the media continuing to push this narrative, I think, is just increasingly out of step with where the public consciousness is.
That's such a good point. I mean, what makes somebody want to grow up and be a politician? You finally win, you get there to Parliament and you just yell, take your mask, put your mask on. It's such a crazy thing to me.